What's up, gorgeous? Welcome to the Fierce Framework podcast, where we talk about becoming fierce through messy action, baby steps, and cultivating confidence. I'm your host, Mary Beth. I'm an ADHD kid with a dream to see more women breaking out of the box society tells us we're supposed to fit into and start living life more on our own terms. This podcast is designed to inspire you and give you practical steps to start living life aligned with your values and making regular progress towards your dreams. I believe the world benefits when you show up as your full self and you're living life lit up. So let's talk about how to do that. I am so excited to introduce you to my friend Kristina. We've had so many great conversations together, and from like the first time we were met, it was like we got to get on a podcast and chit chat because she just has like so many like powerful, impactful things to say. And every time I have a conversation with her, I'm like, dang girl, like we gotta record you. So we finally coordinated and got a podcast together. So I am so excited to share this interview with you. Not only is Christina a badass who has fearlessly pivoted through multiple different career fields and does not back away from a challenge or from speaking up when things need to be said. I admire her so much, and I know you're going to fall in love with her because she's amazing. She is a leadership expert, consultant, and a speaker. She is passionate about bridging generational gaps in the workplace. So she's specializing in helping organizations harness the power of generational diversity, basically helping like the different generations work well together, which is so important because like we love to make jokes about it. I love to follow TikTok accounts that make jokes about it, how the different generations are just so different and work differently. And so she has made it her mission to bridge those generational gaps and empower people to work better together. So, through her speaking and consulting, she is reshaping how organizations view and approach multi generational collaboration for more dynamic and a future ready workforce, which I think is so exciting. And I cannot wait for you to get to meet her. So, without further ado, thank you so much for
Ooh,
being here, Christina. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me, Mary Beth.
Yeah, of course. So I know we have the best conversations. We were just talking about how we should record all of our conversations, so we're finally doing it. I'm super stoked. You are one of my favorite people to talk to, but my audience doesn't know you yet. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what someone should know about you when they're just getting to know you.
Okay. Well, thank you. That's the million-dollar question, right? And I will say with a straight face, I'm master of the universe. No, I'm kidding.
Oh,
Um,
correct.
all jokes aside, no, I am professionally, I am a generational workforce consultant and coach. So I work with companies and with leaders to try to help them to navigate managing a multi-generational team. So for the purpose of really achieving high performance and excellence. So that is in a nutshell. I've had a very colorful past from a professional journey. If you want to know a little bit about that. I promise not to give you more than 30 seconds of the most boring 25 years of healthcare experience you could imagine. I'm kidding. We all have a journey.
Seriously. And that's one
Yes.
of the things I love talking about on the podcast because I've talked to so many people and myself at first, like I thought I was supposed to like figure everything out and then start. And the more I learn and the more I talk to other people, the more I'm realizing like it's actually more normal to start and then kind of do one thing and learn and see what's working and what isn't and then pivot.
Yep.
And so I would actually love to hear about like some of your colorful past and some of the pivots you've made and what led you to where you are now.
Wow. Okay. Well, and I will give you so just in the last year, I have pivoted probably 3 or 4 times in my business. And And then but let me back up because I have pivoted so many times throughout my early years of my career, right?
Okay.
So, starting with college, I promise I won't make this long.
You're
I
good.
went to
Take your time.
school, enrolled in school undecided, had no idea what I wanted to do. All I knew is that I wanted a family. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I knew I loved working with children, hated that, okay? I love children from afar, and I love my own children, but I do not wanna be in an environment where I'm every single day experiencing 30 to 40 children that do not belong to me, okay?
Yeah.
So and, I went to school to be a teacher, undecided for years until my university basically grabbed me by the neck and said, "You better figure out a major, otherwise you're gonna lose a ton of credits." And I was like, "Okay, fine." So, chose liberal studies, let's sure, that aligns with teaching, let's try it. Hated it, got in, got out, got my degree. Went into a myriad of different career options, right? I was
Mhm.
driving around Southern California doing field inspections for an insurance company. Does that
Oh,
sound
wow.
like what I do right now? Not at all.
Not even a little bit.
Not at all, right? But it was the best job to have while I was a college student because I could make my own schedule, right?
Okay.
I was putting a ton of miles on my car, but didn't matter. I had a Civic and gas was $1.50. Yes, I just
Good old
completely
days.
aged myself and I don't care. And so I loved that job, but then I got pregnant with my son and so it's like, okay, I can't be driving, to Timbuktu every single day with this growing belly. So I got into healthcare via a temporary position, and essentially just kind of got promoted, got snagged from temp to a full-time position. I was working in disease management. If you're in healthcare, you
Oh, wow.
understand what disease management programs are. But if you're not, essentially it very highly impactful programs, right, about how to manage your asthma, diabetes, your COPD, right? Okay, that's all I'll say. And that's how I got into healthcare. I had no interest in going into any one particular field. That's just what the universe dropped in my lap and I took it, right? And a myriad of promotions throughout my career, over 25 years in my career. I started from answering the phones to managing enormous responsibility of national accreditations for 5 different plans for a national carrier. And the amount of responsibility I don't think I understood at that time was so
Mhm.
enormous that if I wasn't successful, we would have lost hundreds of contracts.
That's
So
crazy.
I know this now. But if you understand that value, then you understand what it's worth and what you ask for. So wasn't
That's why they
worth
don't want you to know.
that's exactly right. So, continue to get promoted and yada, yada, yada. Moved into every position that I probably have never heard of before in different corners of healthcare that had, because I'm non-clinical, right? It had nothing to do with my degree, but had
Mhm.
everything to do with my tool set because
Mhm.
we collect tools. Some people seem to think that we collect titles. We don't. We leave those titles with our employers, but
Mhm.
we carry
Mhm.
our experiences that then shape into the tools we use to create those experiences, right? And those
Yeah.
accomplishments.
Yeah.
So I shaped and collected all of those tools and just kind of, brought them with me to every position and was doing something completely new every single time, right? And if that's not the story of an entrepreneur, right? It's like just getting out there and doing it. Every single time I sold myself on a position, it's just like, I've never done that before, but I know I can, right? And so it's just believing that you can do it. The only difference with
Yeah.
entrepreneurship is having that same mentality and now realizing that you're going to figure out a way to pay yourself to do that,
Mm.
right?
That's good. Yeah, I like that parallel.
'Cause it's I mean, honestly, it's before you're gonna collect a paycheck, from an employer, and there's something safe about that. But
Yeah.
when you say, "I actually am capable of kinda creating this whole new thing that I know people would want, need, in a product or a service," and
Mhm.
now it's just saying, I hold that self-belief, and I know that people will pay me to do it, and that's hard. That's really hard to 1, believe it, and 2, to
Yeah.
carry that belief day in and day out. That's
Yeah.
the hardest part, and that's the stuff that people don't tell you.
Mm. No, I totally agree with that. Yeah. What are some things that have helped you do that to hang on to that belief? Because I agree, it's hard.
Well, I will tell you, there have been some days when I have literally left I couldn't find it,
Yeah, been
right?
there.
And this is not a perfect journey. Um, you have to kind of do a lot of self-discovery.
Mm,
I would tell you doing the shadow work and recognizing those parts of yourself that you ignore, they come up every single day in
mm.
entrepreneurship. Every
Yeah.
single day, right? You have to face them, and I have. It's actually been the only difference that I've had in my recent success has been once I faced my shadow, once I faced, like, my coach, because I have lots of coaches, I believe in coaches,
Mhm.
and my coach has
Me
helped me
too.
to ide to identify your nervous system, right? That
Mm,
essentially is kind of causing you to step back into this it's not a comfort zone because it's very unsettling to be in this space of unknown and unfamiliarity and self-doubt. Like it
mm,
actually sucks. But the thing is that it is familiar to us because we know what that feels like,
yeah.
right? But we don't know what the success feels like. We're actually kind of afraid of that because we've
That's
never
like
seen it or experienced it. Yeah, go ahead.
sorry. That's like when you've been in dysfunctional relationships for so long that you're actually uncomfortable in a healthy relationship.
Right?
So we're so used to like failure or mediocrity that like we don't know how to be successful, like we don't know how to be in that mindset. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. Girl,
That's crazy.
let me I don't know if your audience is male or female, but I'm gonna use a
Mostly
female
female.
reference.
We're girly
It's like
pops.
it's like having a well-fitted, well-made bra.
Mm.
You don't even know it's on,
Most of
right?
us can't even relate to that because
It
yeah, exactly.
and it feels like you don't even know that it's there, right? Because it's like you've already dealt with it. Now,
Mm.
I would tell you, I'm still not in the well-made yet, right? Because it's like we have to do what we have to do. Like you think that Old Navy and Victoria's Secrets. I don't mean to call them out, but we think that those are the best ones for us. Listen, those are bridge plans. Those are helping us getting used to, and maybe this analogy is not great, but Imma keep using it. But when it doesn't fit,
Right.
right? But we adjust ourselves to make ourselves fit. Like, I'm just gonna deal with that discomfort,
Yeah.
right? Because that's the only thing I know, right?
No, that's such a good analogy because I used to work in the laundry department at JCPenney. I don't know like where these stats came from, so I don't know if it's true, but it's something like 85% of women are wearing the wrong size bra. And so I love that analogy because it's like we're also doing that. Like we've just been making do our whole lives.
Yes.
And we could talk about that forever because there's a lot of reasons why. Um, but I don't think I've ever talked about like your shadow or doing shadow work on the show.
Mm.
Can you give us just like a small kind of like explanation of what that is and what that looks like?
Oh, yeah. Well, and I will say I'm not the expert. I've been the student, with my coach and kind of moving through this. And so I will say shout out to my coach who knows this much better than me. And I'm gonna get this wrong, but I know how it feels. I know how to interpret it, right?
Awesome.
And it's called the limbic system. Completely out of my wheelhouse, right? I don't know what the limbic system is, where it exists or whatever. All I know is that it is highly disruptive. It is where those views that it's I'll say it's kind of the source of that voice in your head that's telling you
Mm,
why you? Why are you trying to do this, right? That's scary. Let's just go back to what we know. You know what I mean? Like that kind of crap, or
mm,
just go back, like, that nobody's gonna wanna buy your services. Like, what makes you think you can be a coach, right? It's like all the deepest, darkest fears, right, exist there. And they come up as really like a survival brain to
mhm.
try to make sure that you don't die, right?
Yeah.
Um I think, biologically or whatever, it's intended to really actually just get us to survive to the point of reproduction. And then after that, it doesn't really care. It just kind of overworks and it's like, reproduce so we can keep humanity moving, right? It's like
Mhm.
it from evolutionary perspective, it just serves that purpose. But we tend to let it kind of, take over all of our thoughts and to lead us down a path that is not necessarily right for us. So we seem to think that this voice in our head belongs to us, and not really. They're really just thoughts, right? And fears that are rooted in survival, and that's
Mhm.
it. And once you can actually, instead of locking it away, that's actually the worst thing you can do. Ignoring it never goes away,
Yeah.
right? So open it up. Invite that. We even do with my coach. We even gone to the point where we name it to give it some type of characteristics to kind of
Okay.
invite it into our life to know how it is that we're going to work with it,
Mhm.
right? Mine and probably exposing an awful lot about me, but mine is this little 3, 4 year old little girl who's just scared, right?
That's
And
relatable.
she's just and I know I kind of, formed her probably a very long time ago. She's not a separate personality, so I don't have multiple personality, disorder. Um, but, but I've used her as a coping mechanism to be the reason why I didn't do things, the reason
Mhm.
that that didn't take action. And
Mhm.
so and it was all based out of fear. So
Mhm.
I've started pulling her into conversations, into decisions, and when I start to feel the anxiety kind of rising in me, when I start to do things that are new,
Mhm.
that's when I know I need to have a conversation, right? And
Mhm.
manage my energy instead of and quoting my coach again. See, I believe in coaches, right? I manage my energy instead of my time. So if just because I have the time to do that thing, if my energy's not aligned, it's kind of like making you ever cook when you're mad? That food tastes like crap, right?
I mean, no. What?
Right, I have made the same exact thing, let's say spaghetti, right? 2 different nights, and one time I was truly pissed off, and that food came out so bad. It's like I poured venom into my food, like, my kids were like, "Mom, did you do something different?" I was like, "Why? Does it taste?" They're like, "I don't like it." Okay, there's there's a magic to cooking with love,
Mhm.
and there's a magic to, kind of approaching the things you do with positive intention, you know? And so it goes it's the only tangible way that I know how to describe, kind of sitting in your energy and welcoming positive energy into your space.
Mm.
That has all eluded me for years. It's like, how the
Yeah.
hell do I do that? Right? I meditate for 10
Yeah.
minutes. Is that doing it? No.
Right.
How do you reach the point of, of the right energy? I never knew what that looked like. And
Yeah.
so I'm still figuring out what that feels like. So that's my terrible explanation of how I
No.
think to explain it.
I love it, dude. I love it so much. Hey, so we're always talking about our dreams and making progress towards our goals on this podcast. But what if you don't know where to start, right? Maybe you're so full of amazing ideas that you have a hard time narrowing it down and picking something to start with. Or maybe after years of not having a say, you don't even know what you like or what you want anymore. Either way, I got you, okay? I created a free course that's just for you. It's a 5-day training on how to find your focus. It's super easy because all you gotta do is you sign up, and I'm gonna deliver a lesson to your inbox every day. The course is all about helping you hone in on what lights you up so that you can focus on one thing at a time and start making progress towards your dream. It's super easy to sign up. You can go to thefierceframework.myflowdesk.com/focus. I know it's kind of long. Thefierceframework.myflowdesk, that's my FLO desk.com/focus. I've also got the link in the show notes, or you can always DM me at the Fierce Framework and I'll hook you up. So I loved what you said about managing your energy instead of managing your time. And I think that's so important and something that's like come onto my radar pretty recently. Could you elaborate more on like how you figured that out? Like what types of things work for you? Like how to manage your energy?
Oh, yeah. Well, doing the work with, identifying who, the fears that I had
Mm.
inside and approaching, because when I tell you I've pivoted like 4 times, it's because many of them have been like, "Oh, let's do this really awesome thing. I know we can do this." Like it's like in eh, the solid belief that I can, right?
Mm.
Knowing standing in assurance that
Love that.
this is the right path for me. And then there's like, okay, well, let's do this one thing, tiny little thing on the side to make sure, just in case that fails, right? Because that big thing out there is like, holy crap, right? And it's like, let's do this little safe thing over here. Right. And so that's what I mean by, like, the pivot, and
Yeah.
managing my time, I mean, so I have not been diagnosed, but I'll say I'm just awesome. That's all I think that ADHD and ADD, and I think we all have just different layers of awesome,
We are
um,
so fun.
that get us, you know what I mean? Like, honestly, they just keep us in survival mode sometimes. But, how I manage my energy instead is by setting my intentions for the day.
Mm.
And I will tell you, this sounds so cliche to say, but just please you just flow with me. This actually it's worked for me. And when on days when I don't journal and journal on my intentions for the day, I have a fucking terrible day. Okay?
That's
I'm
so real.
I'm telling you, like, I literally look like, like a brainstorming blob of like, okay, let's focus on this one thing. No, let's go to these 10,000 things all around me. Right. And at the end of the day, I feel like shit because it's like, what have I accomplished?
Hmm.
Right. I have to, I'm also too kind of type A personality where I've got to check off a list. I got to know that I've done something. I will put that shit on my list that I've already done just to check it off. Right. So I know that's relatable because I've talked to many people who do that. So I know I'm
Yes.
not alone.
No, you're not.
But it's so the journaling piece. So um aside from the work I've done with my coach, I've read this amazing book that another friend of mine who's a coach actually recommended to me, and it's called The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. And it's a
I just read
fable.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I might have shared it.
I think you probably
Um,
did.
it's and I would tell you, listen to it if sitting down and reading is not, because I listen to pretty much all of my books.
Yeah.
And It's it's a it's a story that has practical, actionable steps,
Hmm.
and you'll gain something new every time that you listen or read to it, that you read it. And there was one thing that I pulled out of that book that I have been using on a daily basis, and that is 3 things that I keep track of, or it's actually a blend of this book as well as The Gap and the Gain. There we
You've
go.
recommended
Same
those to me too. Those are on my list. Okay.
by the same author, and I would tell you The Gap in the Game is the first one to read. Um, so blending those 2 books, right, together,
Okay.
this is what I've come out with every single day that I journal on, and this is the start of my day, is the 3 things I'm most grateful for,
Mm.
right? It's to take a moment to actually reflect and sit in gratitude, and it's at least 3. You can list as many as you want, right?
Yeah.
But it's also to helping you to kinda collect and, collect your receipts, your accolades. Your gratitude can simply just be for the fact that you have the opportunity to sit in this space and journal about this thing,
Yeah.
right? And the second thing is the journal on the three wins from yesterday. Right?
Oh, okay.
How
Yeah.
how am I winning? Right?
Yeah.
Because this is already that's actually your receipts. If you started, like, putting up a bunch of Post-its on your wall that just started tabulating all of your receipts, what are the
Hmm.
3 wins at minimum that you have from the prior day?
Yeah.
And many of them are, part of the 3rd step that you have, which is what are your 3 target wins for today?
Hmm.
Right? So, what
Yeah.
do you want to set an intention around? And it's intentionally only 3,
Yeah.
because anything more than 3 actually starts to feel like a long list, right? And like you can't actually achieve it. Now, I have many times, exceeded 3 simply because I've only prioritized those 3, and because I just start winning, it's just like, "Okay, let me just keep going and keep going."
Yeah.
Other days I've done 0, except for manage my energy, right? And so there have been days when I've sat down with that list and I've said, this is not gonna work. Like, my
Mm,
computer is watching me, right? I'm not even paying attention to anything
mm,
that's going on in front of me. And so I will literally just call time out and I'll be like, I shut it all down and be like, no, it's time for me to go on a walk.
love that.
It's time for me to go read a book or to do a puzzle, do something that is
Mm,
not this because I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to do instead of what I love.
mm,
And that's the difference between managing your energy and managing your time, right? And as a entrepreneur, the laundry list of all the shit that you need to do every single day, especially as a solopreneur, is at least a million things,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So when you think about that, you literally start to feel overwhelmed. And that's
Mm,
why it's like, just have you seen that commercial recently of the guy who represents like the to-do list of a business owner? And it's like he has like, I don't know, a million, he's just like this monster of post-it notes. And he keeps slapping them down everywhere he's going. It's a great ad, right? But it's like that literally is our life, right? Everything we could possibly do, we can never do by ourselves, and 2, we can never do all at once.
mm,
So, just pick 3 things that you can execute, and don't make it like sign 10 clients today. Okay, fuck off. That's not happening, right? Make it something that's
I love it.
actually reasonable. Set
Yeah.
yourself up for success. So, that's what I do.
That's amazing, dude. There's so much good information there. I love that it's only three, and I think that's so powerful because just like you were saying, like it's so easy to get overwhelmed and just having those three things. I've definitely heard about the gratitude, um, but I think the wins from yesterday, I think that's so huge because especially as entrepreneurs, when you have a never-ending to-do list, or as any woman, honestly, right?
Yeah.
There's a million things we're supposed to be doing. Just having that like never-ending to-do list and just the way we're like socialized to feel like we're never doing good enough. Highlighting those wins, like three wins every day and making yourself like sit there and think about it, I think is so
Yes.
powerful. And then documenting it, like this is huge. I'm so stoked about this because we so easily like write off what we've done, what we've achieved. And this I think it's Kathy Heller usually talks about like and other people too, but like how we move the goalpost.
Oh,
And so
yeah.
it's like you hit one goal and instead of like celebrating the achievement that you completed a goal, we kind of like brush it off and we're like, oh no, this is what I'm doing now. Like this is the next thing.
Yeah.
And so you never get that sense of achievement that helps build you up. And then because that part of that too, like the reflecting and like acknowledging your achievements is what helps build the confidence too to keep going and to like
Absolutely.
build your strength in what you're doing. And so often, like, we don't give ourselves that. So that's why I'm freaking out over this three wins. Like, it's so freaking powerful, dude. I'm gonna have to start doing that. That's huge.
Well, you're so right because, I've coached many women through their careers, and the one thing that I always hear, it's always the moving of the goalposts. I I like to call it, it's like the never-ending triathlon. Right? Because you're moving from I mean, you may change, like, you're in the water, you start in the water, then you get on the bike, and then you run, and then you get back in the water, and it's like it never ends.
Mm,
It never ends, and I
dude.
say triathlon because that's the level of genius, that's the level of brilliance, especially as women, that we have when we approach the things that we do. Once we decide we're going to execute, we do, like, we give it 100%, and we just go for it, and to your point, the goalpost constantly ends. It keeps moving because we never decide that the end of the race, right? Or getting to the bike, getting to the run, getting to the end is actually worth celebrating,
Mm,
right? And
yeah.
so we blow through all of it. And there's one exercise, and you can do this if it's helpful, because I'm a visual person. I have a wall full of Post-its of my wins, and they're like these tiny little Post-its, that each of them are different colors to represent something new. And I also to do this with my clients, get like a big mason jar and get the same Post-its or something colorful. Visually, you want to
Uh,
be able to see it grow. So if you were to put
yeah.
3 marbles or something like that in that jar every day to represent your wins, imagine where you would be in a week, in a month, in
Yeah, dude.
6 months.
Yeah.
Visually, you could see, you can't it's undeniable.
Hmm.
I am winning, right?
Mm,
This damn jar tells me I'm winning, right? This wall of Post-its tells me and reminds me that I'm winning because not when, but not if, but when the day
hmm.
comes for you to doubt yourself, if you need the visual reminder, it's there.
Yes.
Right? Sis, you are so much bigger than this moment of self-doubt.
Come on. Yes. I love that you said that too because I was gonna ask like if you like go and just like look at that wall on bad days. Because one of the things I love to tell people is I'm like, bro, when people start giving you compliments, when you get kudos, when you get positive reviews, like write that down. So when you start doubting yourself and you start feeling like you're not making any difference in the world and like all this crap starts creeping in, like go read the truths about
Yeah,
you and what you're doing and the impact you're having.
right? And
Because
don't
so,
keep those truths locked away, right? Because they
yeah,
may be in my journal, but if they weren't on my wall, I wouldn't remember.
right. Because on your worst day, you're not going to go dig through your journal for some obscure entry. You need it like right here. Because if you're already struggling, you need something easy,
Yeah?
right? It's like they say, you don't when shit goes down, you don't rise to the your aspirations, you fall to the level of your training. And
Yes.
it's kind of like that. It's like you're gonna reach for the easiest thing. You're gonna go back to whatever habit, whatever's comfortable. So in order to give you to go get that positive affirmation, like we have to make it easy
Mhm.
because like you don't have the energy to go be like creative and innovative and digging through your journal to find the inspiration when you're already having that like shitty day.
Oh, yeah, that's not gonna happen. It has to be visual. There's actually there's actually a truth in psychology behind a trophy room, right? You're like, "Why the hell do
Mm,
you still have your high school trophies?"
yeah,
Right? And medals. Like, give that away. Who wants it? Nobody's gonna want to have my little trophy nobody knows that I was a swimmer, competitive swimmer for 15 years,
I
right?
know.
But because I know you do. No, but when you put your trophies out, they don't have to be 1st place. They could be glass, you know? I have 8th place trophies and medals from the work that I've done, and it's posted or it's in a place that's visible to me just
Mm,
to remember, like, "Listen, I have been winning all along the way."
hmm.
Right? And you may not have a trophy, but you may need to write it down and put that shit on your wall, right? To
Yeah.
remind yourself of the things that you've done. I mean, the people who are winning are not necessarily the people who are homecoming queen, right? And king in high school, right?
Hmm.
So, but if that's where you need to go back to kind of draw your energy to remember that, listen, I was actually really good at doing these things. I was always there for my friends, right? I
Mm,
helped counsel them. Like, we formed a group or a club or anything like that. Sometimes you got to start with recognizing the impact that you have had from the very beginning. 'Cause it's more like you have always been who you were, and in fact, your light has been shining brighter in different times of your life, right?
yes.
So,
I love it, dude. Just out here preaching.
I can't help.
uh,
I get on the pulpit a little
and I'm
too
here
often.
for it. I'm here for it. I love what you were talking about, how you've always been who you've been, and going back to, if you have to like go back and pull from maybe who you were before the world told you you're supposed to be somebody else, or before
Right.
you got bullied for being a type of way and then you started changing. Um, I just think that's so powerful. And then when you, towards the beginning of our conversation, you had mentioned you collect tools. And so you were talking about like in your corporate journey, how you had gotten all these promotions and all had all these different roles successfully because of the tools that you had collected along the way. And so talking about like your strengths and like creating a group or like whatever wins you had based on like your skills when you were younger and kind of translating that into encouraging yourself today, it reminded me of talking about the collecting tools. And so I wanted to come to that, back to that, and ask like, how do you identify those tools that you have and those skills that you've collected, or like even natural talents? Because I think especially as women, we struggle to identify like our own strengths. And I
Oh,
see
yeah.
time and time again how like when we're really good at something naturally, we tend to discount it because it's not hard. When
Oh,
really
yeah.
it's like that's what you want to lean into. Like,
Yes.
so
Yes.
could you tell us more about like that and how to identify those type of things?
Holy crap. Okay, so that's a challenging question, and I'm here for it. I will tell you, I've struggled with that so much, and I mean, think about it just from a resume perspective.
Hmm.
If you had to write down is and raise your hand if your resume has been just a regurgitation of all your responsibilities, right? I do this, I do this, I do
Yeah.
this, I do this, right?
Yeah.
And there's and that has been acceptable in prior decades outside of right now where you need to stand out. And the only way
Yeah.
you stand out is by saying, here's why you need to care what I did at in this
Mm.
role at this company. Right. And that is a very uncomfortable space for most and for actually mainly for women that I've experienced is because to your point that you just said is we don't give ourselves credit because we believe that everybody knows this. Everybody can do this. We're not special. We think that everybody else knows how to do this. And I don't mean to draw the lines, right, like, for the gender lines, but
You can. I
men are
don't
not
care.
out there thinking, "Oh, everybody else knows how to do this, so I'm not special." No, they think, "I can do this." They don't care about anybody else who's around them,
They're
right?
not
They could care
constantly comparing themselves. That's so weird.
no. There is no competition in through their eyes, right? Most men that I've worked with, that they're not considering who's to the left or right of them, right? If there's a direct opponent, it's usually from a job perspective, it's that interviewer. Right? And so that's the direct opponent. We tend to get to shy and to get into the space, well, I don't want to seem boastful and I don't want to oversell myself because you're
Mhm.
concerned about what it leads to, making promises that you feel that perhaps maybe you may not be able to live up to. Listen, you do every single time. Right? We
Mhm.
live up to our own expectations, but we start setting the bar lower and lower and lower for ourselves because we are afraid of taking the next step, of jumping and saying, actually, I used to lead. I think I led and told you I was responsible for the accreditation for 5 different plans
Right.
nationally. That was a big deal, right?
Mhm.
You start understanding the gravity. And here's one exercise I would work through with my clients with trying to get into the space of recognizing your impact. And that
Mm.
is catastrophize the thing that you are responsible for, right? So imagine if you were responsible for getting a train, right, from A to B, and you you did it, right? Because that's your accomplishment, but you seem to think that getting people from A to B was like, everybody does it, it's no big deal. No. And you didn't think about but if you catastrophize it and say that that train never arrived, in fact, it went completely off the rails, right? There was carnage, right? Catastrophize the whole thing.
Wow.
What would that look like if you hadn't been successful? Worst case scenario, the whole thing, right? How
Yeah.
many teams would be impacted? How many people, like, put a dollar amount to it. What would have happened if you would have had to start from scratch again? If you would have had to source a new team, right? And because I've worked with a lot of project managers, that is a way to start figuring out, listen, it doesn't matter whether or not everybody, there are lots of hammers, lots of screwdrivers, right? It doesn't mean that the hammer doesn't make the carpenter, right? It's how they use the tool.
Mhm.
And that is something that only you know.
Wow. Just the catastrophizing thing, which I feel like a lot of us who like struggle with anxiety and stuff, we're so good at that anyway. So like twisting that to use it for your own benefit, and then you painted such a visual picture of like visual picture, whatever. Bear with me. Of the like you said, the carnage, like what would happen, and then acknowledging like you prevented all that. You're
Yes,
basically a hero. Like you made sure by just doing your job that none of that happened.
that's right.
Oh, we do not give ourselves enough credit.
No, we never do.
Insane.
We never, and that's
It's
why it's
so
like
bad.
we need visual reminders. Another thing that is helpful is ask people around you, you know,
Mm,
people who love you to provide you some feedback, right? And or to maybe use descriptive language to say, what are I remember when I first started thinking about how to get into starting my own business. I asked a
mm,
couple of my family members and my friends, what is one thing that they would come to me for advice? Well, oh my God, I got so many different responses. It was like, I'm never doing any of that. What the hell is
yeah,
this? They're like, oh, I like your style. Like, what? I'm not a stylist. I
yeah.
use Stitch Fix. They style me because I can't be bothered. I hate
Shout out
stores.
Stitch Fix.
Right? And so, but sometimes what you need is to understand the descriptive language that they're using to, how do they engage with you? You know,
Okay.
what do they think of when they think of you? And it's not necessarily just about what you do, but it's like how you approach your relationships, how you kind of
Yeah.
exist, like, and sometimes we need that. It's definitely a morale booster. I mean, it's going to boost your own morale, but it's also too going to help you to start to get some understanding as to some of those tools that are in your belt,
Mm,
you know, because you can't see them. You think, like, I never realized that I was good at public speaking until I started going back and asking people. And I was like, yeah, I don't shy away from that. I speak in large groups often. I used to run training programs.
yeah.
I've spoke to a global audience now. So, you start, these are facts, and you
Yeah.
just start building on your facts and you realize, "Oh, I've got all of these tools in my belt. What else
Mm.
is hiding in there?" It's like cleaning out an old purse. Go dive. You're gonna find some money.
Truly.
I
Now,
showed my
and
age
that
again.
and that public speaking ties back into what you were saying, where like you just kind of assume that everybody's good at it because the what the stat on public speaking is insane. Like people would rather go to the dentist. Like most people would rather go to the dentist than public speaking. And so something like that, where like you didn't even for a while didn't even acknowledge that like you had that skill, and that's a really rare, valuable skill. And so being able to identify that and capitalize on it, I think is so huge.
Oh, and I actually used to think that I wasn't good at public speaking, and a little known fact about me is I actually used to have a stuttering problem, when I was younger.
I would have never
So
guessed.
my mom is my hero, and she helped me to kind of embrace this. I'll say this was long before there were speech therapists who were
Mm,
widely utilized and available, right? And also too, I'm a Gen X raised by a boomer who believes like, like you just have to get your mind right in order to be able to approach that. Just decide that you don't want to do that anymore,
right.
right?
Just stop stuttering. Duh.
Exactly. Now, I did not have an extreme case, so for me, it was easy to do that. But for others, is not the case, right? You need structure to do it. But what I've done is I've adapted a way of speaking that helps me to be clear, right?
Mm,
That is actually become part of who I am. And when I get overexcited, that's when things start to go off the rails. Um, but I also I figured out how to identify my triggers that are getting me, kind of excited and start to bring me back to my point, right?
mm,
Um, and so I used to not think that I was good at public speaking for that reason because
mm,
and also too, I'll say I adopt all the labels because they help me, they keep me warm at night, right? So I'm also an introvert. I don't really like being around large groups of people. But just because I'm an introvert doesn't mean I don't have those moments of extroversion,
right.
right? Where because I honestly believe you could put me on the stage in the middle of the Super Bowl. If I'm talking about something that the audience wants to hear, then I'm going to do it. I'm going to bring it,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And so I've always felt that I am comfortable speaking about things that I know, that I'm
Mm,
knowledgeable about. I'm not gonna talk about something I don't,
right.
right? But I am happy to share because I always have an opinion about everything, right? And if you wanna hear it, I'll tell you.
Especially if it's an educated opinion. Okay. Why would you keep that to yourself? This
Right.
is like side note, but I freaking love that you're talking about being an introvert and still talking on stages, because one of the things that like irritates me so much is like introverts don't hate people. I am an introvert and I hate most people. Those are not the same though. It's mostly like the definer of an introvert is like where you get your energy. Like I can
Yes.
people. I can turn it on and I can go people and be social and do the things. And I feel like I've probably performed before. I've public spoken a little bit, not eloquently like you, but like I can do it, right? And the point is like it's not that introverts can't do those things. Sorry, this
Right.
is like near and dear to my heart, so I'm just like soapboxing here. It's just that like you might be exhausted after, or you might be depleted after, but like that's okay. Athletes are also depleted after they go play their heart out on the field, or like, after you perform, or like there's nothing wrong with doing something productive that depletes you and then you have to recover from. That's
Right.
working out. Like this is like a normal part of life. So I know I'm going on a tangent. I just love that you brought that up with the introverts though, because like it doesn't mean we can't do things. It just means like
No.
we probably have to recover after. Big freaking whoop,
It's
dude.
it just all comes down to the management of your energy. That's it, right?
Yes.
And if the thing it is that you want to do is going to require so much energy of you that you'll also too have to have a significant amount of recovery time. It's just
Mm,
about setting expectations, right?
yeah.
So knowing how it is that you're going to prepare right before going to that thing, doing that thing, and afterwards, yeah, when I speak, I don't schedule anything afterwards because I'm usually on this kind of like a high and I also too am latchkey child. So like I go into my corner and deal with my own mess. Right. It's like, oh, totally hit the wall on that one. Right. It's like I'm all talked out. I don't want to
Mm,
talk to anybody. And to your point, it's not that we hate people. I am very selective about who I talk to because I don't enjoy everybody's energy. And that's
right.
okay, right? That's my privilege. Um, but I love that you're bringing it up. Introverts, we just do it differently, right? And that's it.
Yeah.
It doesn't, I have been completely exhausted. I have worked parties and networked my ass off, for hours.
Hmm.
Was I down and exhausted for like 2 days? Absolutely,
Yeah.
because I was, like, pumped up on Red Bull and everything, and it would drop to the ground, right? I
Yeah.
used everything I possibly had, but I also too know how to leverage that extroversion
Right.
energy to
Right.
do the things that I want to do.
Right. And to do it well.
Yeah,
Like as an introvert, you can be excellent at networking. Like those things are not mutually exclusive.
absolutely. I'm excellent at
Love it.
networking, and I'm an
True
introvert.
fact. Yeah, that's why we're friends. 'Cause you made me be your friend. You adopted me.
One day we'll have to share
I'm
that
so
story about
glad.
how we met.
Thank you so much for joining us for the first half of my interview with Kristina. I hope you love her as much as I do. She's just a wealth of knowledge and insight and encouragement, and she's so fabulous. So I can't wait to share the next half of this interview with you next week, and I certainly hope that you'll tune in. A couple of my favorite things that she talked about was how we're afraid of success because we don't know what it feels like yet. It's like the fear of the unknown that kicks in. I thought that was so powerful, and it really helps like put things into perspective because there can be just a lot of resistance. It can be hard to identify sometimes. And I thought that that was such a powerful like reminder and kind of shedding light on how things can be. I also absolutely love her strategy for managing her energy, and I've been implementing that recently, and I'm here for it. The three things you're grateful for, three wins from yesterday, and three target wins for the day, and just like journaling those out and having those at the forefront of your mind for every day to help keep you focused and making sure that you're working on the things that are actually priority and that you're able to be intentional about where you're putting your time and energy. Love it. One of the other things I also loved is when she was talking about keeping your wins visual and easy to access, like her post-it wall with all her wins on there. I think that's so powerful. I was talking to my friend Megs. You might remember her from an interview a while back. She is a professional organizer with ADHD. She's also incredible. She has what she calls a smile file. And so I believe it's like a digital file. And so this can be anything, right? Speaking of ADHD, post-it notes on the wall, a digital file on your computer, a special notebook or something where it's like you just want it to be easy to access so you don't have to like dig through your regular journal, right? So a dedicated space to put your wins that's easy to access so that you can reference it regularly and hype yourself up and remember how amazing you are. I love putting in kind words that other people have said, feedback that people give about like how you've impacted their life, all those kinds of things that hype you up and keep you going and remind you of your why. Those are the kinds of things that you want to put in your smile file and that you want to keep handy so you can reference and see, like, look at these wins, man, and encourage yourself to keep going because it gets hard sometimes. It gets hard for all of us. That doesn't mean you're failing. It getting hard and being difficult is part of the process. So that is totally normal. And that's why it's important to have strategies like a smile file to be able to reference or a sticky note wall to remind you that people love you and you're making a difference and you're doing incredible work. Love a rant. Okay. So I have included Kristina's links in the description, and then we will get to see the next half of this episode next week. So thank you so much for joining. I look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, keep becoming fierce.